Hello and welcome to Defect of the Month. My name's Bob Willis, and every month I try to provide some information, some examples of common defects associated either with a particular type of defect or a process. This month I wanted to talk about pin-in-hole reflow, intrusive reflow, multi-spot soldering. There are lots of terms used for this method, but basically we're soldering through-hole components with solder paste in plated through holes to make reliable terminations. In essence, that's what it's all about. Now, first thing you can do is download a copy of my free book. I wrote a book a couple of years back on pin-in-hole intrusive reflow, covering all aspects that I'd experienced over the years of running this particular process. It's free. If you'd like a copy, all you need to do is ask. Now, the process, in my opinion, is very simple. It works, and we have lots of evidence to demonstrate the reliability of the solder joints produced. So let's just step back for a second, rather than talk about the process, because you can read the book, but talk about some of the issues. Now, damage to components. Now, if you've got components that won't stand up to the reflow soldering process, be it vapor phase or convection reflow, then that's a design-related issue. The design engineer needs to make sure components are compatible with the peak temperature of the reflow process. And also, if you're going to be using multiple suppliers of components or alternative suppliers of components, that needs to be borne in mind. It's a key factor. And these are just a couple of examples of components that have been damaged and obviously won't work very successfully. And the quality guys won't like them either. The next issue I tend to find a lot of is poor solder fill, but a lot of that is to do with the hole to lead ratio. Now, if you have a large hole and a small pin, you've got to put a lot more solder in the hole. So what we're trying to do is get the process balanced. So if you go by my very simple design rule, is the finished hole size is 10/1000ths of 1 inch greater than the maximum pin size. If it's a round pin, straightforward. If it's a square pin or an oblong pin, it's across the biggest corner. That's a simple one. Now, also, I found over the years that I can use components and boards using these design rules with automatic assembly. So you can use your SMT placement machine if it's capable of working with odd form components to place those. You don't have to do it as a manual process. Do that and you can achieve easily IPC level 3 standards for through hole fill for intrusive reflow. I've used intrusive reflow on high temperature, normal lead free soldering, and also on low temperature. And I can tell you, based on results that we've had, we can produce very successful results and very reliable results based on mechanical and environmental testing. Solder balls. Now, solder balls generally are caused by solder paste being displaced underneath the component during the insertion process of the connector or the socket on the printed circuit board. So the design rule for the stencil needs to be verified with the component. You can't do it in isolation. You can work out the volume of solder paste you want, but you've got to look at the connector and see the standoff positions of the connector to eliminate solder balling. Outgassing. Now, you've heard me talk about outgassing of printed circuit boards many times, and I've showed the oil test, which is a classic way of demonstrating this particular phenomena. But with pin-in-hole intrusive reflow, if you have got boards that are outgassing, when the solder paste goes into its liquid phase and starts to reflow in the plated through hole, you can get solder balls spat out from the holes. Now, you shouldn't see this in a good quality printed circuit board today, but it's worth bearing in mind it's not the only reason for solder balls. We can get issues of solderability on component pins that we're using with this process, but that's a pretty standard issue that might be seen on any soldering process. Now, if you want a copy of my book on pinion hole intrusive reflow, all you need to do is ask. There's an email available on the website associated with this video, and I'll be more than happy to send you a copy. Thank you very much for listening to Defect of Month this month, and I'll see you next month.